Rise Above 2020 is happy to present Dimitris Papagiorgiou, Managing Director at Accenture's Strategy and Consulting Practice, and Shweta Dimitris, Director of HR Technology and Employee Experience at ADOBE. Shweta is an employee experience and HR technology thought leader with over 15 years of experience in managing, designing, and delivering global solutions in people technology, insights, and operations. Shweta is paving the way in delivering sustainable workforce and workforce experience through future of work and talent management programs to help drive business growth and productivity. In his current role, Dimitris focuses on HR transformation and business value realization. He has extensive experience in assisting clients to select and deploy global HCM and payroll solutions. Dimitris has over 20 years experience that spans across industry and consulting with strong subject matter expertise in HR operations and business enablement through shared services and outsourcing. Please welcome them as they engage in a fireside chat on the topic Managing Employee Expectation Through HR Technology.
Shweta, thank you for taking the time to, at an early time actually, at your location. So much appreciated making the time today. We have an exciting topic within an exciting conference. We are going to be talking about fulfilling employee expectations with HR technology. We live in a world where everybody has expectations, employees, managers, shareholders, and technology often is asked to fulfill those expectations. We also know that technology has evolved tremendously and has been tried and tested, I would say, in the last 20 years by many developments in our space. Nonetheless, none of the developments or the challenges compares to what we're currently going through, which we'll be discussing today. Shweta, any thoughts from you?
Well, thank you for organizing this, Neeyamo. Really excited to be here, and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Really exciting topic for today, and let's jump in.
Awesome. So as we mentioned, technology is evolving and employee expectations are evolving with it. In your experience, Shweta, what have you seen in the last decade as being done different by vendors that create said technology, and how employers are using that technology in order to address the needs and fulfill employee expectations?
Yep. Thanks, and a really great question. I feel like maybe two parts, as you said, right? How and what vendors have done. And you see a whole slew of vendors over the last decade, right? Some have been really leaders in sort of the core capabilities that come along with core HCM or core payroll platform, like Workday or ServiceNow and SuccessFactors. But then there are a whole slew of other vendors who are actually targeting some really niche capabilities, I think, in the talent acquisition space, in the talent management space, be it sort of your survey platforms or listening strategies. And I feel like, there's a really good mix of capabilities and tools available right there. It's actually really up to the client or to the customers to see how to rightly balance that portfolio, because there is definitely a need for these niche products, because they really help solve a particular problem. But at the same time, I feel like these core HCM vendors who are also trying to build on some of these capabilities, how do you kind of balance between getting that niche capability, but at the same time managing your tech debt? So really interesting times for us, I believe, especially over the last decade.
Absolutely, wholeheartedly agree. But you mentioned the niche capabilities. So I will ask probably an intrusive question, but are you a fan of best in class or best in breed?
I wish I could answer that question. I do feel very strongly that you have to have the right balance. There are certain capabilities or tools that you would want to resolve or solve by best in class and best in breed tools. But then there are certain things that you want to, you have to balance the portfolio. Did I understand your question though, right?
No, you did. So again, you're absolutely right. I think it's a balance and kind of an evaluation and the trade-offs correspondingly, deciding to go one way or the other. You can get probably better pricing and possibly connected data by using, a connected solution. At the same time, you may be losing in fidelity and capabilities by not leveraging the niche capabilities that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, I think definitely, sort of pricing and, economies of scale is definitely at play here. But I think also we have to understand, and sometimes we in HR, tend to think of ourselves as the customers, right? So talent is asking for a capability, or rewards is asking for a capability, or, the survey, DNI is huge, right? And they're asking for a capability. But we do have to realize and understand that our end consumer is an employee or a manager, right? And how much can they, right? I mean, it is about making it simple for them at the end of the day, because they're not in the business of using your capabilities on a day-to-day basis. They're in the business of developing a product or doing finance or selling or marketing, right? That's what they do. And so it's really important for us to understand as technologists for in the HR world is whose problem are we really looking to solve? And then based on that, perhaps, get the right mix of the technology tool set. In fact, I do see a question here, which is like, what are the top 3 barriers to employee adoption of the new tech? Which is such a great question because, we, and over the last decade, as we said, right, have seen constantly evolving capabilities and tools and technology set. Part of the reason is that is the barrier to adoption, because you can't keep constantly throwing technologies at it. So I do feel like if you make it more around distributed systems where they have to go in and out of technologies to accomplish their employee life cycle, that's a barrier to start with. You have to make it simple and seamless for them. Now, Dimitri, any other thoughts on what other barriers are there?
I think sometimes it's culture, culture of an organization when it comes to technology and use of technology. Often enough, I think we connect service quality to our ability to interact with a person or pick up the phone and get something done. Whereas technology now has, far advanced and often we get a much better result leveraging said technology. In addition to the natural, I would say, tendency of humans to resist change. Usually, change it's something that we are initially apprehensive towards,
Mhm.
and being able to overcome that apprehension and again embrace the solution and understand how it betters your own work life is very important.
Yep, excellent point. I think maybe I'll take it to, since we're talking culture a little bit, right? What have you seen, especially this last year, or I would say 2020, has been just a year of unpredictability, especially in the US right now, with the cases growing and everywhere over the world, we've obviously seen this pandemic grow. How do you see, and what do you see the role of a HR technologist or even HR overall play out, and how do you see that kind of evolving?
So if a year ago we were having a discussion where we were talking about organizations with 300, 400, 500,000 employees working remotely, many would argue that this is not possible. I think the pandemic became an accelerator of adoption of new ways of working and
Mm-hmm.
promoting different cultures, a culture of trust, first and foremost, because I would say the tendency around having employees in an office, besides the ability to connect and collaborate, was also a matter of trust. Is the person actually producing work? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing if I don't see them?
Yeah.
And the pandemic definitely accelerated us in a much more abrupt and violent manner than anybody desired. But there is some good to be had out of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think there's a joke going around that's what led your HR transformation, and it's actually COVID-19 that led your HR transformation journey. So yeah, excellent point. I think what we've also seen here at Adobe is, again, we're definitely thinking about what is that right balance now that we've seen almost like 8-9 months of productivity, and when is it sustainable? And then I think it's really important to understand, right, how do you kind of bring about sort of the culture that you need to imbibe in your employees when everybody's so distributed, and especially when you have new hires coming in, right? A lot of companies haven't really stopped hiring, and so yeah, really interesting times ahead. But I do agree with you. I think we're definitely going to see some changes in just the way we work. The future of work is here.
Absolutely.
Embrace it or not.
And I'll tell you from an HR technology perspective, I think it was a good pressure test in terms of how ready are you to accommodate the situation as such, whether it's a natural catastrophe or a pandemic. And many organizations actually were caught a little unprepared. So there was a mad rush for upgrading or modernizing technologies, procedures, policies. And I can't say that that everybody's doing the modernization right, because again, when you're doing something that it's not necessarily thoughtfully planned, you're going to end up with less than desired results. Also, I see with some of the clients that I work with that they end up settling for what can be done in the time that they need it versus addressing the need of the business or the employee with a complete experience. So there's a lot of that kind of trade-off of what do I need and by when versus what do I truly need from a business perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a question for you, how have you seen it, from the practitioner standpoint, how has your life changed as a result of the pandemic? I can tell you that I see a lot of my clients being asked to do a lot more with a lot less, meaning, the fund is going away from a investment in technology because many organizations have to preserve cash because they don't know how long this pandemic will go, but the demand is not going away. Everything that's happening regulatorily around us asks more from the HR technologists. So,
great question again. And I do feel Adobe is perhaps a little blessed in that sense that we are in an industry that is in the space of digital transformation, and it, believe it or not, like I think, again, the demand for the products have actually gone up. And hence, we're in a place where constantly as HR technologists, the demand for what the business is needing is continuously going. So there's no question about that there's a huge amount of demand. Then how do you kind of support that? And again, I do feel like that's where, we call it something like ruthless prioritization is really important in today's times, right? You will not be able to address every single thing that comes your way. And so how do you get to the right priorities? How do you make sure that you're addressing things that are obviously compliance and legal related, but at the same time are going to be able to allow you to leap force a little bit in today's world, right? Again, there are a lot of cases and very simple examples, right? We at Adobe made sure that people who were eligible for their sabbaticals, we moved out their sabbaticals so that they're actually able to take sabbaticals since nobody's traveling right now. And we want to make sure that we do that for our business and for our employees and managers, right? So that definitely takes a priority for us in terms of making it happen. Again, open enrollment time, those are the things that you absolutely have to make sure that you prioritize. But at the same time, there's a big push now for finding talent internally, because again, to your point, companies are trying to preserve cash and they're trying to figure out, hey, I have an asset, but before I go outside, can I find those people internally, right? So how do you kind of promote an internal talent marketplace is really important. And now that's not something that, you just switch on or change overnight. It's very much of a culture thing. You've got to figure out the right foundational and architectural elements within your technology framework to make that happen. And so how do you embark on that journey, which is not necessarily quick and easy, but at the same time really necessary in today's world. And so you have to figure out, again, the right prioritization, I would say.
No, absolutely agree. And your comment actually just reminded me of a question that I meant to ask you, which is how much do you think HR technology today enables the technologist to be seeing through the eyes of the employee for the end result. So is technology today positioning us to behave with empathy to what's happening, or is it just a rigid expectation?
No, absolutely. I would say, and again, I mean, I think to start with, I would say we've always, right, in the HR technology realm again. And the interesting part is we are the consumer and the customer of our own technology as well, right? Our teams are consumers. We're all, employees at the end of the day and managers at the end of the day. So we get to experience that technology firsthand as well. But I absolutely agree that especially in today's time, lead with empathy is really, really important. We do have quite a few questions on the chat, so let's make sure we get to them. I think, do you think employee expectations today will create an impact on long-term HR strategy for organizations, or would they fade away after the pandemic subsides? I'll start and then Dimitri definitely chime in. I don't think it's going to subside. I do think that there is going to be a tectonic shift, I would say, just the way how CEOs and CFOs are thinking, and realizing the potential of, getting that right HR strategy in place from an operating model perspective. Work for future or future of work, as they say, it's real and it's here. So I don't think it's a fad that's going to fade off.
No, I absolutely agree. Although I do think that we're going to see different levels of adoption of the new way of working by industry, primarily driven again by the fact I was actually on a call right before we started this session, and the client said, employers are no longer asking for permission to relocate. As part of the pandemic, many people have actually moved. They don't want to be stuck in the place where they found themselves being or living. And they said, if I'm going to end up spending the next year from home, might as well be in a warmer place or, with more of a backyard. So there was a lot of movement that has happened globally, I think, as a result of the pandemic. And I'm not sure that we will be able to bring everybody back in the office if we wanted to.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think there's another question just as a follow-up is, are today's HR technology tools given enough importance to empathy?
I'll go first on this one. So I think our tools are not designed to give enough importance to empathy. I think our tools are meant to take away the transactional work we are presently doing in our day-to-day life in order to allow us enough time to engage with empathy in the human interactions. So I don't think it's necessarily a systematic way to address the question here. It's actually freeing up enough time for us to engage with empathy, whether it's a new hire, a prospective hire, or an employee that is seasoned and on their way out, being able to actually approach them and spend adequate time without having to worry about transacting the related activities for them is what technology is meant to do.
Yep. No, I agree completely. And I do feel like, which is where we're seeing at least a lot of, bandwidth issues amongst our ERC or the resource center community, right? Because they're the ones who are getting sort of bombarded with a lot of those questions ranging from, basic questions about, again, to your point, can I relocate? How does that impact my taxes, etc., all the way to sort of, really being, mental awareness issues and mental health issues, which we're seeing because of the pandemic. So that organization's taking the bulk of it.
I will actually backtrack a little on my statement. So I think the tools in themselves don't necessarily enable empathy, but I think they allow us to mine the information needed for us to lead with empathy. So 3-4 years ago, I never heard the client asking me about employee sentiment and how to mine that and mine it real time, let alone, like on a daily basis by location. So there's now a lot of tools that are being brought into the market to actually ensure that one, employees are engaged, two, they're continuing to stay upbeat and doing as best as they can in this situation, So I think those tools are definitely focused around the ability of employers to exercise empathy towards the employees.
Yep. Yeah, agree completely. Um, there's a lot of data available now, but you're right. I think there are lots of tools as well available to be able to mine that information. A lot of organizations actually have started to heavily invest in the analytics space. Just in general, the people analytics space have come up pretty quickly and pretty drastically, and I would say in the last few years, precisely for that reason.
There is a question there about hybrid working models. In your experience, do you think they're feasible? And do you believe that they actually have an impact to productivity?
I do think that hybrid working model is going to be the norm. Actually, I do not think that we'll all be going back. All of us will be going back to the office 5 days a week, every single week, right? However, there are certain areas that lends themselves more naturally to a more hybrid working model than some others, right? I mean, there is a sense of serendipity. I was just on a call with Baba Shiva. We had a reunion with our Stanford ITL class, and this question actually did come up, and we were talking about, how do you innovate? How do you innovate at the back of a paper napkin like we used to? Or how do you innovate where you're just meeting somebody in the hallway or getting a cup of coffee when you're all working remotely, right? So I do feel like there are areas that lend themselves naturally more towards, hey, having, face-to-face communication, being in the office, thinking sort of, group thinking, etc., right? Creativity. But then there are certain other areas that do lend themselves to be perfectly fine working remotely. And we've always been having sort of a hybrid model, I would say, in a lot of tech companies, and I think we're going to see more of that.
Perfect. From a metrics perspective, what do you think matters in terms of measuring in order to ensure that you're tracking towards your goals from an employee experience perspective?
Right, to make sure I understand what the metrics that performance management tools should track to ensure high employee experience, right? And that's a really good question, right? And I mean, I do feel like, we've come a long way again from listening strategies perspective, right? So at some point we used to do perhaps like one survey a year without necessarily a lot of NLP associated with it, and the questions were pretty binary. We've come a long way from there, right? So there are certain metrics that we do track on in terms of employee experience or employee engagement, as it relates to, doing a lot of pulse surveys, especially now with the COVID. At least Adobe has done quite a few of them just to kind of gauge on, are you getting enough information from the company? Do you trust the leadership? That kind of things. But I feel like the question's perhaps a little bit more around performance management tools should track, ensure higher employee experience. And there are a lot of performance management tools. I think it is tricky though, right? Because there are certain things around the performance management tools, and if I'm understanding the question correctly, there is a self-driven, self-motivated approach from an employee perspective. And so, it's kind of hard to say, can you use those tools to track employee experience particularly? But Dimitri, your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that is that we should be measuring adoption of technology versus use. And I'm making the distinction because I think often enough, again, we assume that by implementing a technology, the technology is going to be used. And that is not a true statement in my experience. I think assuming that you're going to build it and they will come has failed and failed again many times in the past. So I think the adoption of technology and creating the value case for the employee as to why should they use it, how should they use it, and start measuring the metrics associated with that as to whether it's sentiment mining, whether it's text analytics. So kind of expanding the capabilities that are often beyond what most of the performance management tools give is a way to truly start measuring employee experience.
Yep. We have a few more questions, but I think we're short on time, so maybe we can take one more and then we can kind of continue in the other area. But maybe this one's interesting. How will the employee experience evolve as hiring companies bring on more contingent workers? How can firms better engage gig workers? And I feel like that's a real problem, right? Or a real issue to solve for, because we are going to see more and more of contingent workers and gig workers in the economy. So go first.
So again, I think the gig economy is here to stay. It's not going away. There is definitely a very, very rapid growth in the space, and many individuals choose the flexibility of gig work versus the traditional employment route.
Mhm.
So how do we ensure consistent employee experience? Quite honestly, we need to treat them the same. We need to actually treat employees and contractors in the same way we do talent management and training for both, and ensure that from a look and feel perspective, it doesn't necessarily differentiate them, although we know we have to keep some boundaries very clearly defined from a compliance perspective.
Yep. I agree. So I think we're almost on time. So let's perhaps wrap. Again, really exciting topic. And thanks for your partnership, Dimitri, on this. I think we're at time now, and perhaps we can.
Indeed, we are going to be wrapping up. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you in the breakout room. Thank you.
Thank you.